We've essentially seen Tyler, the Creator, grow up within his music. While his earliest work is far from sophisticated, and listening to albums like Bastard and Goblin kind of feels like entering the mind of your friend from grade school's edgy 12-year-old brother who lived on 4chan and you do your best to avoid when you went to their house, I do see how someone might relate to their occasional honesty if they feel something like an outsider or misunderstood, but it's not a worthwhile trade for all the slurs you have to stomach. However, the flair of his personality coming through in whatever he puts out does benefit him. Just look at 2013's Wolf, whose personal angle was one of its most substantial selling points. And at least the turbulence of Cherry Bomb was a pivotal component in his progression in thought and experimentation, regardless of the end product. 2017, though, was where I started to see Tyler, the Creator, in a new light, although I don't think Flower Boy was a revolutionary hip-hop album or anything like that. It felt like a breath of fresh air in context of who we knew him to be before, and was endearing in the fact that it showed anyone can mature and change drastically for the better. IGOR, on the other hand, is a richly psychedelic proclamation of love, which takes contradicting lush and gritty tones and blends them together into a flowy soup. Often songs will be spruced up by these sugary melodies while still working around their primary backbones, and use repetition to their advantage, like A Boy Is a Gun's pianos and hook just lock you into their bounce and coincide surprisingly nicely with the same sample used in Kanye's Bound 2, actually, which adds a dash of old school flavor. The gunshots supporting the track's concept while easily enhancing its sound was also sharp as hell. And IGOR is also very emotionally naive. His writing here comes across as if he's detailing the first time he's ever been in love. His thoughts aren't grounded in reality or focusing on what's best for him, making it a jeopardous affair. There's nothing flashy about the way that it's articulated, which I like. This concept is so translatable and close to people's hearts that any extra fluff might just complicate things. And I can't help but love the sentiment behind Earthquake's hook, and I find it really clever and heartwarming how he alludes to his world being shaken up by someone like this. But knowing the detriment said person causes him throughout the album, I love how he just snaps and develops a totally different perspective on the situation on what's good, and how his devilish presence on the mic reflects that. It seems like the point in the album where he realizes he's tired of bending over backwards for a person that doesn't reciprocate his feelings, and I think the rush of confidence that a moment like this brings is magic and should be held on to in the early stages of healing from a failed relationship. Now, the vocals on this album seem to be a pretty common complaint, and I think since IGOR isn't shooting to replicate the style of a classic R&B project and feels more focused on a left-field sonic approach and his raw feelings, and although the songs are tightly assembled, the way the instruments are handled feels a bit wobbly and spontaneous. Generally, I can look past it. I mean, if it was vocally polished and on the nose, it might not fit as well. But I do occasionally find them to be distracting. Like on Gone Gone, Tyler's singing just puts a bad taste in my mouth right away, and then I can't even escape it in the hook since the pitching there is just so irritating. And this is one of 2 tracks on the album that I think is kind of trying to make up for the fact that none of its main melodies are that resonant with a bunch of switch-ups. The other being Puppet, whose bare synth notes feel completely alien to the rest of the album, and Kanye is just buried in this wash of other instruments and barely contributes anything other than an awkward inclination that something more should have been there. And additionally, the hooks on the last 2 tracks are just performed clumsily and not in a way that supports their objectives. And where Tyler starts to Please Don't Leave Me Now on New Magic Wand sounds so weak, it momentarily releases me from its grip, which was pretty tight. I mean, its clattering drum groove and throbbing bass is so freaking exquisite. And it also has this sick moment in its second verse where there'll be a new instrumental garnish after every bar. First, it adds these rumbling drums over top of it, then there's a wispy sample, and then the isn't in the 60-40 isn't working retracts, after which all of those elements pile together and the vocals layer up, and honestly the beats lure here nearly makes up for the vocal issue. And again, the production has moments that I always get lost in without fail. For one, I think has a thick, housey groove with a campfire-esque crackling annihilated by a sinking 808. It progresses by sprinkling in silky 80s synths, and although it does use some of the same chords as Stronger by Kanye West, it makes me feel completely different, so it doesn't bother me much. And Running Out of Time has all these circulating melodies, such as whirling synths that feel like roving through an 8-bit world, and gravelly bass notes, and these brief instrumental flourishes and vocal samples. These elements are fleeting in the same way Tyler believes his chance to make this person love him is. And overall, I think IGOR's lavish production and lyrical allure and how it demonstrates the rush of sensations that come with being in love, from fondness to resentment to misery, makes the parts that aren't delivered in the most technically sound way easier to swallow, and they don't constantly detract from the experience. So, I'm feeling like a 7 on this one. I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I hope you did too. So, yeah, I'll see you next week with a Flylo review, probably. Or something, some album. And hopefully I come up with a better way to close out my videos soon.